Laugh at the cringe and learn from the crumble. This is Cringe and Crumble. So some women know how to excel in every room that they walk into. They know how to lead, build, protect, and even own that room in a professional setting. But when it comes to love, suddenly their competence turns into confusion. And that's where the question comes in because now the question is no longer, can you succeed? It's more so, can you be successful without making someone else feel safe? And for a lot of women, that is where the performance begins. So, welcome back to Cringe and Crumble. I'm your host, Tranisha, and today's conversation is called Love is Not a Performance Review. Because I know so many women, also myself, feel the pressure to be impressive, but not too intimidating when it comes to relationships. Sometimes I'm powerful, but then I can't be too threatening. I can be independent, but not too independent. So, this is where we have our special guest in here today with us. And I am super excited to have Melissa Nanavati. She's a TEDx speaker, author, and relationship coach who helps high achievers build thriving relationships without sacrificing ambition. Through her peak performance love framework, she explores what it really takes to build connection, clarity, and emotional safety in love. And what makes her perspective especially interesting is that she is not shaped just by her work, but by her own dating journey and including going on more than 100 first dates before meeting her husband. So, with that being said, Melissa, welcome to Cringe and Crumble.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Alrighty. Is there anything you want to say to the guests before we dive in? Because I have so much for you.
I mean, yes, the first thing is that if this has been your experience, we understand. I understand. This is not an uncommon experience and is really what made me so motivated to get into this line of work to help other high performers, both men and women, really navigate this process more effectively and learn how to translate the skills that made you successful in business to your love life.
And so this is really great because this is where I want to start. I want to start with identity, right? Because I think this conversation gets flattened really quickly into successful women because of how hard it is to date and actually what that actually looks like when it comes from transitioning from your business performance into your relationships because you know how to function at that high level. You know how to anticipate things. I know how to pivot, but then what happens is when I bring those qualities into my relationships, it gets kind of meshed, right? So, my question for you, Melissa, is when you think about the women you've coached or even your own experiences, what do you think success teaches women about work?
So I think one of the biggest things that particularly high achieving women really struggle with is identifying their whole worth based on their business success or leading with that in the dating process as well. And this is the same for men as well. And in working with men, that they lead with like their success instead of their authentic self. And it's like we suddenly forget how to connect on a person to person level when we translate that from business to personal. Now we're still trying to lead with a resume versus showing up, being inquisitive, being curious and having the identity of being the chooser, not the chosen, is a really key shift. So when we identify as I have to be liked, what do I do to soften? How do I show up best so they will choose me? That's when we run into trouble. That's when we end up showing up not as our most authentic self or as our best self, but staying in the driver's seat and dating is absolutely essential.
So, do you think I like how you said like how to be the chooser, not to be the chosen? And I really do, and I really connect to that because I think do you think we're just afraid that we may get rejected? So we're too busy trying to outperform and perform overly because we're like, I want to be chosen as opposed, like you said, to be the chooser.
100%. And if you think about this even from a business lens, if you go into like a sales call, even if you're not in sales, we're all technically selling, right? We're selling ourselves in business. And so if you go into a sales call and you're like, I really want them to buy, the energy that you show up with is so needy, so insecure, and it's hard to be chosen. So the irony is when we show up like, do I want to work with you or do I want to date you? It's going to change the energy you bring to the conversation and the type of questions you ask and how you present yourself.
I never even thought about that. Now, what does it look like when a woman is strong in life, but the strength starts turning into more of like that control, that hyper independence, and an emotional armor in the relationship? So, what does that really like looks like?
The truth is, when we're showing up with armor, we're actually not being courageous. And that's actually the opportunity to act with courage, right? It seems counterintuitive. It's like, but when we show up with armor, we're acting based from a place of fear. We're trying to resist doing something that would create an emotional response of pain, which is understandable. Nobody wants to feel pain. But if we're trying to avoid a certain feeling, we're going to show up with walls. So what I always say is like, courage is one of the core virtues that you do learn as a successful person. You have to be courageous in business. And so thinking of it from the lens of, would you not jump on that sales call because it might not go well? Of course not. You're going to still take the sales call. Same thing in dating. And it's just that we haven't practiced that same skill of courage in a different arena. So when we try and control the environment, we try and control the person, the dating process, it's because we're afraid of something. We're afraid of being left. We're afraid of not being chosen. So it's really about confronting that fear and being honest with ourselves of, yes, there is a risk. Anytime there's a reward, there's a risk. And to get the kind of love we want, we have to risk being hurt.
You're so right. There's always, if there's a reward, there has to be a risk. And we have to be allowed, I guess, be honest with ourselves to have our feelings hurt sometimes. But also, I think, in a sense, as you said that, like, it's actually okay to be rejected in a sense if you are this capable woman, because I think that you realize that it's like intervention or like divine intervention that this person can't really handle who you are. But I also don't want to be too aggressive in it. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
And believe me, it's a balance, right? But I will say on the rejection front, there was something I did for myself because I used to be painfully afraid of approaching men that I found attractive. And
Oh,
it was a running joke in my friend circle that if I was avoiding looking at a man in the room, it meant I found him attractive. Like I was so nervous about rejection at the time. I was like in the best, case scenario with my business, everything else, had everything else on paper. And so what I did for 6 months, and I do recommend this, maybe not to the same degree, but for 6 months, I made a rule that every time I went to the gym, I had to talk to 3 people before I left to practice dealing with rejection. And I'll tell you, there's even one particular incident that stays with me, which was I had actually asked a man to take his AirPods out so I could talk to him, but I didn't have a plan. And I ended up asking him how to use a bench. So do these things though, like practice talking to people. Maybe it's not talking to 3 people every time you leave a gym, but maybe you go up to one person before you leave a coffee shop and just say hello. But we have to get practiced at feeling that sense of rejection because it reminds us on a biological level that we're not going to die, right? We think of rejection as the same thing as being cut or punched, right? It's the same as physical pain in our body and neurologically. So if you train in that emotion of rejection, it becomes less scary.
that's really interesting because when I think about it, like I said, like the name of the episode is like a performance review. Like when you get that constructive criticism, sometimes you can't even take it because you're like, oh, wait a minute, am I like, what did I do so wrong? Like, do they really like me? Like, how do I? And when you translate that into the dating world, it's the same thing. You're just kind of getting that constructive criticism.
It's just feedback. Yeah. And it's also okay to not be chosen. Like the goal is not to be the most popular person to date. The goal is to find one person. And that is a really hard truth to, as a high performer, I'm sure you get it too. Like we want everyone to like us. And once you realize like the goal is not to be palatable to everyone. If you're palatable to everyone, you're nobody's, number one. And so not looking at it like, oh, I'm keep getting rejected. That means there's something wrong with me. It's like, no, you just haven't met somebody who has the level of confidence that is required to be with you. And that was a big thing for me too. I went on over 100 first. I think I got up to like almost 120 first dates, not because I was trying to, but because I kept running into people that weren't totally aligned. And when I finally met my husband, he was the first person that made me feel really celebrated and really good for the fact that I am driven and ambitious and he had the confidence within, right? For me to be better at certain things, for him to be better at certain things. And if you keep running into men who are like turned off, it doesn't mean you need to tone down. It just means you haven't found that one person. And the good news is it only takes one.
then that actually brings us into the next section of men and power and attraction. Because the common, I guess, the misconception is that men are really intimidated by successful women. But you just proved that, of course, that's not true because you found an aligned partner. And, but I also wanted to dive a little bit deeper in that intimidation because even though we say men are intimidated by our success, are they just uncomfortable when they can't be centered or need or playing that like head of the household figure? Like that could probably be the issue. So my question for you is, what do you think is actually going on when people say men are intimidated by successful women?
So, a couple things are going on. First is every time we go into a date, we are both, each party is coming in with a completely different lens of reality, right? Of what men should do, of what women should do. So,
Hmm.
when we're on a date with someone, the odds that our lenses meet up right away and that we're on the same page are almost zero. And so, it's an unpacking of that and having those early conversations of like, hey, what do you envision a relationship should look like? Right. And that's where you're
Hmm.
able to discern of does this person's idea or lens of what it should be match with mine? And if it doesn't, are they open to compromise? Are they open to a different perspective? And I think openness to feedback is one of the number one qualities in successful relationships. So as you're having these early stage conversations, it may not be that they're intimidated. They might just have different constructs and ideas of what the relationship should look like. And does that match with your map of what you want a relationship to look like? So again, being in that driver's seat, in the chooser seat, allows you to discern, like, hey, if this person has some really different values about wanting, a woman to just be a housewife, and I don't mean just in a negative way, but meaning that is the primary role and anything else doesn't fit with their paradigm, that's okay. It's not right or wrong. It just won't fit for you. So again, asking the right questions early on to say, hey, are you somebody that wants a career woman as a partner? And if not, that's okay. That doesn't mean they're wrong. They just have a different perspective of what a relationship should look like. So I don't know if it's an intimidation, and some men genuinely are, but just like some women are genuinely intimidated by men, right? So it's not gender specific. I think intimidation can happen on either side, but that intimidation rather than a curiosity and a celebration just means that person hasn't fully found themselves yet and they're not fully confident in who they are.
So you say that. So what happens if you think if a man is attracted to the woman's ambition at first, but then over time, that ambition, his ego kind of gets in the way and he doesn't really like to coexist with it. You know, like you said, if we looked and we said at first he's like, I'm fine with it, but then over time he's like, I don't really think I'm really comfortable in this. So how do you even navigate that? Because we did what we were told to do, but then my feelings are hurt and I don't want to be here anymore.
For sure. And actually, the last breakup I went through right before I met my husband was exactly that. He
Oh.
celebrated my intensity, my drive, and then towards the end said it actually made him very insecure. And I said, that's totally okay. I'm not the person for you. And it doesn't mean you immediately have to break up with the person by any means. But again, you're looking for signals along the way of, is this person indicating that there's a high degree of insecurity? And so there should be conversations well before that point if both people are open, right? But if the other person isn't open and forthcoming with the fact that they're starting to feel insecure or nervous, there's nothing we can do ultimately. And it's really on both people to not take 50% ownership in a relationship, but 100. So we both should be taking 100% accountability for ourselves, the way we're engaging, and really showing up and asking the right questions. But what I would encourage someone, if you're dating someone, you're starting to feel like they're pulling weight, bring it up. Have the conversation. Say, hey, is there something that's been on your mind? Because you can normally tell the signs well before someone says, hey, I'm insecure about this. And yeah, totally. They're not celebrating your wins. Oh, yeah. So I was just going to say, if they're not celebrating your wins, if they consistently seem like just neutral when you're winning, like somebody who can't clap when you win is a very big indicator.
That's the
That's the
worst.
worst.
That is the
It is.
worst. I
It
don't
is.
yeah, I don't like that. And I've had friends, which is unfortunately it's like kind of like a side track of this where I had a friend who actually decided to shrink herself for this relationship because her ambition was too much for this person. And it was very unfortunate because you could see it all unfold in real time where it was like very successful, great in finance. She owns a lot of property in her country where she lives, but the husband comes, well, her future husband comes in and he's he's not intimidated. I guess I wouldn't say jealous, but
Probably a little. Yeah.
by the fact that she has all these things, but as the man, he should be the one doing this. And so I'll never forget, he made her leave all of that. And she lived in another country and she came to America. And I was just like, this man uprooted you from all of the great things that she had going for herself, for him to start a career. This is the beginning of his career into the middle of nowhere. And I mean, the middle of nowhere, Melissa. It was like, I was like, "Where do you live again? And what are you doing?" And now she couldn't find the job, but he's got a job, but it's not even making close to what she was making. And now it's like, "Well, how about you have the kids?" And even till today, they're still together, and I am super happy for them. But I saw that transition and I thought to myself, I never wanna feel like that or feel that I have to shrink myself to be with someone.
And there's two pieces to what you just said that I would love to dig into. So first, it's did she seem unhappy? So that's the first question that I have.
You know, the funny thing, initially, she kind of was, and she was just like, "I don't wanna do these things." But then over time, I wouldn't say it was kind of how you can kind of just you
Make
can
it okay.
what
Soothe it.
yeah, you
Yep.
just start picking
Yeah.
away, and then
Yeah.
it was like, "You know what? I'm getting a little bit older, it's fine." And it's like, "Is it fine?" So, it was, like,
And it's hard
not
to
at first,
say.
but now she's happy. At
Well,
least I like to think she's happy. I mean, we all put
I
on
hope so.
great personas, so
Yeah, and to that point, it's one of those things too. From the outside, it's always hard to tell, right? Unless it's our direct experience. Because what I do want to shy away from too is saying like, "Oh, I can't ever move for a man, or I can't ever do X, Y, Z." This sounded very not like that at all. However, her goals may have shifted. Maybe she didn't want to be the earner anymore, and so it's hard to say from the outside. But if there was that resistance, that's what draws concern for me. Is she now like shoving down her own needs? Not having the conversations that need to be had. Because if they ultimately came to resolution that that was the best next course of action for them, then good for them, whatever that may be. And everyone's journey looks a little bit different. But the thing is, we don't want to be so compromising that we are losing out on what we ultimately want. And goals can shift over time. Maybe she did want to be someone who stays at home. That's totally okay. And there's nothing wrong with that either. But it's really making sure that we're not giving up everything that we want for someone else and then holding that into resentment, because that's where the problems occur. It's not necessarily the choices, but can you live with those choices and will you be truly
yeah.
happy?
Yeah. Like, I'm okay with them. Like, I think you're completely right. Like, I would definitely move myself for my husband if that's for the better move of everything for us, for the greater good. But I think I find that people just sometimes we just uproot ourselves just because we think this is for the best, but not really for the best for the both of us. It's kind of like one person gets to be whole and then you have to be half.
Yeah. And that's where too I think there's the opportunity to really get crystal clear on what are the day-to-day things that you need, right? Because if you look at relationships, I always like to talk about it in seasons. So, especially with high performers, you're going to have different seasons where one of you might be striving a little bit more than the other and you might be a little bit more in a supporting role. But as long as you're having conscious conversations about when that season will end or shift, like is it just the first couple years someone's starting a new business that you have to be the primary earner, right? So having conscious conversations about seasons is what allows you to prevent resentment building over time. But if we're not consciously having these conversations, about what season we're in, but B, what do we need during this season? Because I think it is absolutely untrue that a partner can't support you or do nice things for you, even when they're in their busiest season of life. And I experienced this firsthand with my husband. He was training to be the first person to ski across Antarctica alone when we got together. He had to raise $1 million to do it. And that was what we were doing our first year of our relationship. I was fully funding our life while he was fundraising. And knowing that that season would change, though, when he got back was key. And then on top of that, he made time for me. Just because he was attempting something literally no one had ever attempted before, didn't mean that he put us on the back burner. He would consistently surprise me with flowers. He would make time for dates, right? And all of this while literally training, fundraising, doing something no other human had attempted. So anytime someone says, "Oh, I'm too busy to invest in the relationship," it's a lie. You make time for what you prioritize. And I have firsthand experience of how that simply isn't true.
Yeah, that is so true. You make the time. And did he actually go across and
He
ski?
did. He made it 500 miles going uphill, dragging
Ah,
a sled that weighed over 400 pounds completely alone. 60 days to do that part of the journey. He unfortunately got medically evacuated, so wasn't able to complete the entire crossing, but he still broke records. I mean, it was incredible.
that's incredible. Oh my goodness, that's awesome. Why is he not on Netflix right now? I need to see this documentary.
Well, there's a documentary in the works actually in
I was gonna
post-production.
say because I was like, I need to see this documentary. I've seen the guy who's been climbing up all the buildings. I want to
Yep.
see his journey of being alone in Antarctica, going up, what is that, so many miles, like
Yeah, 500 miles alone.
500 miles. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm so
completely
happy
alone.
for you, Melissa.
Oh, thank you. I'm happy for me too. I was in Scottsdale, Arizona while he was in the cold. So I was moral support.
Even more support. Oh, that's
Yeah.
so good. So then I'm gonna just kind of like change the subject a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's start talking about discernment then and
Mm,
attachment styles. Like, how does that
absolutely.
show up as a successful woman, right? And you going into this relationship, like what do you bring into that? Like, how do you get out of it? Like, let's just talk all things discernment and attachment because I
Yeah.
think this is where is your powerhouse.
Discernment is one of my favorite topics. You guessed it. And so often, what I find, especially for high performing women, is we either go into the dating process with no list at all. So we are just like, I'm going to be open, I'm going to attract, I'm going to find somebody,
Well,
or we have a super rigid list that is overly specific about the wrong things, like height, hair color, right? Like all the aesthetic things. And I'm a firm believer that you can create chemistry with anyone, with just about anyone that you are aligned with. And so often we're operating from, do I feel the spark? Do I feel that initial chemistry? And I'll tell you, even my husband and I didn't have that like movie moment initial spark, but we built it. And when we figured out we were aligned, we kept seeing each other in different contexts. We were doing all of the things that created the right neurochemical chemistry to create connection. So I'll quickly sidebar on what that is. So there's really three neurochemicals at play when you feel a sense of chemistry. The first is dopamine, which is the reward system in the brain. That is
no.
activated through novelty and play. So having new experiences with your partner, which is why dopamine tends to be the dominant neurochemical when we first are dating someone, because everything is new. We're going to new places, we're having new conversations. So the second neurochemical is oxytocin, and this is the bonding hormone. So it's activated through physical touch, moments of like shared laughter if you're maintaining eye contact for just a few seconds longer than what feels natural. And then also sharing vulnerably. Anytime you share something about yourself deeply and the other person connects, you're activating oxytocin. And then the final is serotonin, which is activated through positive social interactions, sunlight, exercise. So let's say you go on a walk after a date with somebody, you're synchronizing movement, maybe you decide to hold hands. You're going to start feeling that sensation of chemistry just through intentionality. So
Wow.
that's why I believe being discerning based on core values is so key because you can build chemistry with people who are not your quote unquote type. And if you've just been dating your type the whole time and you haven't had a long term relationship out of it or it hasn't worked out, then your type isn't working, which is a really hard truth because that was me. I kept dating the same type over and over again, thinking I was going to get a different result. And you have to be willing to shift out of that.
So how did you learn how to shift out of that? Because I know some of us are very stubborn in what it is that we want. We still
I
like
still
that
like
rigid
that.
list.
Yep.
I know I would go in like, I'm gonna be open, but in the back of my head, it's like I still have a couple of
You still have a
things.
list.
I still have a
I still have a
list.
list.
And I like how you're like the dopamine levels. Like I love the feeling I feel when I get out of like the gym or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in like I'm gonna say oxytocin.
Oxytocin, yeah.
Yeah.
The
Like these
oxytocin
are things I
feeling,
never
yes.
knew existed. Like I'm sure they're there, but you never know like how to navigate that into a or like weave it into a relationship. So how did you like decide one day after 122 dates? How did
How
you?
did
I'm
you
seriously like these are the
Yeah.
core values that I have, and I think these are really great core values that actually after this conversation, I'm taking them with me, and I'm not stealing them. I'm just going to take them so I
No,
can
no,
learn.
just steal them, steal them. I no, I this is that thing. I want everyone to put this into practice. I mean, there's really kind of two sets of core values that you want to be thinking about. So first is like the character values, right? So two to
Okay.
three, like what is it that you really need in another person? Not which qualities you want in yourself, but you want in your partner. And one of the best ways to figure this out is actually to ask one of your close friends what you think I should date. Who do you think I should date? What are the values? And that's how one of the values ended up on my list. One of my best friends said, "You need somebody who's really generous." And I thought, that's weird. Why generous? And she said, because even though you've worked on your overgiving, you still tend towards overgiving. So you need someone who's going to innately reciprocate that. And that is a core value I wouldn't have thought of. I knew integrity was, but generosity had never been on my list before. And then the other set of values is lifestyle values. So this does not mean you have to do the same hobbies. Like you don't both have to play pickleball. You can have different hobbies, right? But it's really about having shared like desires around what you want your life to look like. Are you somebody who enjoys travel? Do you enjoy new experiences? So getting on to that level of like what sort of 2 or 3 kind of core lifestyle values. Like one of them for me is I am sober. So I don't drink anymore. I used to drink way too much. And so for me, dating somebody that was sober felt somewhat limiting, but it was something that I knew I had to have lifestyle wise. And just so happens, my husband's sober. So having really crystal clear lifestyle values and core values is how you become more discerning. And that started, I would say, around like, I would say like date 80 or 90. I was like, okay, I got to redo my list. I got to stop having it be so rigid, but just pick a couple of core values. And my dating experience totally changed. I was able to quickly discern, all right, is this somebody I want to continue seeing very quickly? Because instead of just looking for chemistry, you're looking for like real longevity in terms of that compatibility. And that was the key for me.
That's that's amazing. So now I know all the girlies are gonna be like, we should all have a conference once a year with all my friends. We're gonna build a PowerPoint. Depending on the person, everyone has to switch names about
Yes,
why you're a great person and what you should look for your next person. Actually, I kind of like
100%.
this. I think this is a great idea. I would have never, go to your friends. What do I need in a man? But
They're
then
going to
what
know
would you
better than
say?
you sometimes. They really will. They're going to know better than you sometimes because they will have watched your entire dating experience, right? From the sidelines. We're always sharing with our friends, okay, this is what's happening with this guy. And we are often clouded by chemistry. So getting the input of friends of saying, hey, what's some common themes you noticed when I was dating? What should I stop doing? Like getting that kind of constructive feedback from your friends will change your life.
That's amazing. And I love that when you have a healthy friendship group like that, that you can actually do that. So what would you say, like, if someone they don't have such a healthy friendship group, but they have a kind of like a group that's not too toxic, but when sometimes you're surrounded by individuals who believe and do the exact same things that you're doing, like you said, you should align yourself with someone who is probably sober or doing all these other things. Like, how do you know like you're getting good advice from your friends as opposed to like, I don't know, like the advice that they would probably want for
Yeah,
themselves?
so that's a great question. And I will say that making sure that that friend that you're asking for advice is living a life that you respect. People who are living it, right? And I started surrounding myself actually, especially towards the end of my journey of being single, around couples. All my friends, I was like, I want to be in the energy of other girlfriends who are not negative about dating because one of the most toxic, and I don't use that word lightly, but one of the most toxic things you can do is stay in this cycle of being around people who say things like there's no good men, all men are bad, blah blah blah. Like if there's that much negativity, it's going to reinforce and show up how change how you show up on dates. And so getting around people that have really healthy relationships that you admire will also show you what's possible. So it puts you in a positive place, and spending time with other women that are in healthy relationships, those are the women I would ask for advice, for insight into myself and what they're witnessing within me because they're living it. But if you're asking somebody else who's been single for a decade, who doesn't know what they're doing about what qualities you need, they probably don't know. and I'll say that even for myself. I was shocked. I was getting asked relationship advice well before I got into this profession and when I was single, and I thought, I don't feel comfortable transitioning into this career until I am living my message, until I am in that healthy relationship. Because I really, really believe that the best people to get advice from are the ones that are living the life that you want.
I like that. That's just in general. I think that's a great motto, Melissa. That's
Thank you.
I like it. That's you should put that as a little quote from you.
Yeah.
So now that you are in a great relationship and you've surrounded yourself with amazing people, like what does that leadership style looks like in your relationship now, right? Because you went from being this independent woman to now having a loving, I'm sure, healthy relationship with your husband. what does that dynamic look like? Because we're not looking back to the old stereotypes that we're all used to, like the woman stays at home, the husband brings in the money. Like, what does that look like for you?
For us, we are very equal in how we lead. And there's different categories where each of us will take leadership. Still, kind of stereotypically, I take leadership in keeping our house stocked with food, just because I also enjoy cooking and grocery shopping. Now, does that mean I'm being forced into an old role? No. But
No.
I enjoy certain aspects of it. And I think we get too hung up on men should do this, women should do this. And even high performing women, they'll resist maybe doing something more feminine or in the home because they don't want to be put into that box. But true mastery of ourselves and in our relationship is being able to play on both sides of the duality. Like every one of us possesses feminine and masculine energy, and the real self mastery is being able to switch between each at different times. Right? So if we're on a date, I'm going to let him handle driving. I'm going to let him handle leading, figuring out, making the reservation. And we are able to change those roles consciously. Now, it doesn't mean I have to just be in a leadership role in one area or he does either, but it's the practice of continually having the conversations of, hey, do you want me to take the lead on this or do you? Simple question. We forget we can ask that. Or even I will tell him, and he knows this now, sometimes he'll very sweetly ask, like, hey, what do you want for dinner? If we're ordering, some sort of takeout. And instead of saying, oh, I'm not sure, I'll just say, hey, I want you to take the lead on this. I want you to make the choice. You pick. Right. But men, I've found, respond really well to that. And even in the couples that I coach as well, the men actually are so grateful to have the direction of what the heck we want them to do. And so we forget that just communicating, hey, this is what I'd like you to do, can actually smooth over a lot of tension and reduce this fear of, am I in the right role? Am I leading enough? Am I not leading enough? Like, just have the conversation. And when we break it down super basic like that, it changes the dynamic entirely and removes the friction.
You're so right. All you have to do is communicate. And I love that you're just like, you know what, you take the lead on this because it takes the work out of guessing of who's going to do what. And I think a lot of us are not really used to that. I mean, in the corporate environment, it's 100% easy. You take the lead on this, I'll do this and this, but in the relationship dynamics, you get a little kind of shy and being able to communicate really what you want and what you need without making them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, and so much too, I find there's so many unspoken, simple conversations. Like all disagreements, in my opinion, are coming down to just a desire to be understood. And when we are having fights, we just want the other person to understand where we're coming from, or we don't understand where the other person's coming from. So we're upset, we're angry. Why didn't they take the lead on this? Why didn't they plan the date? And really getting away from the old paradigm of mind reading and transitioning to the space of over communication. It will feel like over communication at first, saying, hey, I want you to take the lead on this. It will feel uncomfortable the first time you do that because it's new and new things feel uncomfortable initially. But again, like any other skill in business or elsewhere, it just takes practice. So maybe the first time you communicate that you want them to take the lead, you blurt it out in a really strange way and it's not received well. It's like, oh, this is what I meant by that. Right. And so that seeking and desire to be understood is understandable, but it's really about over communicating and then even asking the question, what did you hear when I said that? And what that will do is it will elicit the other person's story. So maybe in their mind, they heard, ooh, I'm inadequate. And that might be the case that they felt that way. And that's an opportunity for you to rewrite that for them and to say, no, that's not what I meant at all. It's that I trust you to take the lead on this and I'm just making a request. But by having these conscious conversations and adding the question of what did you hear when I said that will help eliminate most of the friction.
I like that. What did you hear when I said that? So, what would you say to some men who may interpret your overcommunication as nagging? Because after a while, when you keep saying certain things, men are like, oh, she's always nagging about this and this and this. And you're like, well, no, I'm just making sure you understood it. Or should I rephrase that? Is there like a better way of how you would express yourself as opposed to not coming off as this person that's always because I say this because I saw this video of this man who was, I guess, he's just wanted peace from his wife, so he's sleeping in a car outside after he got off of work, and she's still in the house, and somehow she finds out he's sleeping in the car, and she's like, "When did you get home?" And he's like, "I just got home like 30 minutes ago." And she's like, "Why are you not in the house?" He's like, "I just wanted peace and quiet. I just wanted peace and quiet, and that's it." And she's like, "Well, I'm gonna come in the car with you," and he's like, "No, I just want to be by myself."
Wow. Yeah, that sounds Yeah, it is very sad. That's sad to hear that. And when I hear stories like that, my heart goes out to both of them, right? Because the wife doesn't know what's going on. The husband doesn't feel safe to express himself or doesn't know how to articulate what he actually needs. And so this is where I'm a big believer in taking a systems-based approach to your relationship, but having conversations about saying, "Hey, what do you need to decompress? I need 30 minutes just by myself before we start engaging after a long day of work." Great. And I guarantee if they had just had that conversation, he wouldn't be sitting in his car and hiding there. Because it's about saying, "Hey, what do you need?" And having the clarity within to also know. Like, do you need a little bit more alone time? Do you need a little bit of time before we start engaging? And to answer your question more directly, though, about how to communicate it better, again, sort of a systems-based approach. Make it a
Mhm.
practice every Sunday to do a quick check-in saying, "Hey, what is one or two specific things you need from me this week? Here's one or two specific things I need from you. I know it's a big week, so maybe you can just make the call on where we go to dinner for our date." Right? But having that forethought and looking at the week ahead rather than responding reactively is really the key to communicating in a way that doesn't feel like nagging. And then to add on to that, having them schedule it. I love a good calendar. If you know you are someone who forgets or your husband is someone who forgets, ask them to put it on the calendar.
Oh, my calendar. I love it. You're like, I have it put on the calendar. Now I'm at the point in
Done.
my life, everything has to be on the calendar because I forget
Same.
everything.
Yeah, I'm
I'm
not going to
like, it
remember
wasn't on
anything.
the
The
calendar.
calendar.
And why wasn't it on the calendar?
And you can put tasks on the calendar or set up structure in your relationship. Are you the person that at the end of the day, you don't want to have to ask, your partner to take care of the dishes again? All right. So do you want to be the person in the evening who just knows that it's your responsibility to take care of like the night shift of, tidying the house or the morning shift? So it's just having those conscious conversations about it instead of allowing it to fester, which is where you get into like the quote unquote nagging cycle because you're not getting what you need and the way you're asking is progressively getting worse or more hostile, which doesn't work for anyone. Like there's two things when it comes to any kind of disagreement or fight. There is the topic itself and then there's the way you're talking about the topic. And the nagging comes in the usually in the way someone is asking.
You're right. Yeah. And now I have to see, Melissa, this is wrong. No,
It's
I gotta
okay. I'm
like,
not perfect either.
I gotta go back. Now I feel like, okay, all right, I like this. I'm learning. This is why I'm so happy you're on the episode today. 'Cause
No, this has been such a fun conversation too. I love the way you think about things as well.
yeah, well, thank you. But I'm gonna flip the script on you now because
Yeah.
now I'm have the question of how can women tell the difference between a man who's genuinely leading and a man who just wants control?
Fantastic question. I think in my experience in working with coaching clients, the kind of key distinction here is really the man who just wants to control will show up with insecurity in other areas. So so someone who is, can't let you plan anything, that's a fear-based reaction, right? Control is not from a place of confidence. Control typically when it comes to other people, like you can be controlling about your craft, your business. That's very different. But if you're controlling other people, there's a fear. And so you will start to see that insecurity show up in other ways. As we spoke about
No.
earlier, is that person unable to clap when you win? Do they try and minimize your success? In what other ways is that control showing up versus someone leading and just taking initiative? There's a certain level of confidence, true confidence, right? Not the fake alpha male confidence, but the true confidence, which there's nothing that you can do to make them feel insecure because they are truly secure in themselves. Like a truly secure man that is actually a quote unquote alpha is quiet about it. Loud alphas aren't really alphas. They're
No,
highly
this
insecure.
very fear. It's fear-based.
Yes. Very, very, very fear-based. And that is really the key difference is does this person have to be so loud and take up so much space? And where is that coming from? So just being really discerning about, okay, are they also very encouraging of me in other ways? Or are they trying to control everything, control how I express myself, control how I express success? And that is really the key distinction between that control versus the true leadership and confidence.
That's good. Okay, I need to get a man so we can do this together. This is great, great. So that's insane, but I really love your perspective on this. So for women who are actually listening, how can we make this as a part of our practice of what do we do? Like, how do we get to the level that you are and finding that great relationships? Don't go on 122nd dates, 122 days, shall I say.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know what? Honestly, I think we probably all have, and we just never counted it. We're just
Yeah.
out here doing it. But how do we put this in practice before we like wrap ourselves up? Because let them know this is not a performance review, but what do we do? What do we do?
Yeah.
Melissa, I
I
don't
mean,
know.
the biggest thing is consistently putting yourself out there. And oftentimes when we've gone on a string of bad dates, we'll probably go through a couple months where we're not dating at all. I raise my hand because I did that too. You'd get frustrated, you would stop going on dates, you would stop trying. But first, again, putting yourself back in that place of being in the driver's seat, the chooser versus the chosen, and making that list of a couple core values, whether they are character values or lifestyle values. So having that crystal clear, and then put a calendar reminder. I love a good calendar reminder. Once a week, 2 hours. That's it. 2 hours once a week. You're either going someplace new, working to meet new people, right? So get yourself in new environments once a week. Or if you're doing the digital online dating thing, spend time not just scrolling, but reaching out to people, set up dates, go on dates. But if you just dedicate a couple hours a week consistently, you are going to meet someone. Oftentimes we say like, oh, there's just no good people out there. But how many times have we actually been around new people? Are we not just going to the same restaurants, the same bars, hanging out with our same friends? It has to be new environments every week. And that was actually exactly how I met my husband. Only shortly after moving to Scottsdale, I committed to go to a new event every week until I met someone. Just so happens, the first event I went to was put on by my husband's friend. And I stayed friends with him and I said, hey, do you know anyone? I'm looking for a man. And he loved how bold and honest that was. And he ended up introducing me to my husband. So we have to stop being afraid of telling people that we want partnership, right? You can become friends with someone. You can meet people at these events that are partnered, become friends with them. And if you like their energy and who they are, they probably have really good friends.
They really do. I love your perspective on new environments. You are dead on. Everyone should put that in practice. New environment every week. It doesn't have to be out drinking. It could be going to an art gallery opening, but I think you are
A
completely correct.
workshop.
Because the same mundane thing, you start to think to yourself, like, oh, there's one out there for me. It's because you're going to the same place. You're in
Yeah.
the same environment. And I just love that for your journey, like your first event, you were very brave enough because not a lot of women are extroverted like myself and
I'm
yourself, 'cause I
not
feel
even
like you're
extroverted, to
extroverted.
be honest with you. I'm like a fake extrovert.
Are you
I'm a fake
passing
extrovert.
extrovert right now? Is that what this is?
So I'm a hardcore ambivert. I really need a lot of recharge time, but I knew, like any other goal. I mean, anybody who's listening to this is a high achiever. You're a high achieving woman, you're a high achieving man listening to this. You know how to go after goals. But if you apply that same rigor to goals in your professional life, to your dating life, like there's no goals you don't put on your calendar. You're not going to skip the business meeting. You're not going to skip the sales meeting because you're scared. You're going to feel the fear and do it anyway. And really, like if you're leaning into the moments you're afraid and using fear as your compass, you're going to find your person. But your person is not in your current circle if you've already tried dating your current circle and it didn't work out. So we have to consistently do that. And trust me, I needed a lot of recharge time. I went to a new event every week. Actually, didn't meet my husband right away out of that event. It took a few more. I went to a few more events, but ultimately he ended up introducing us, was that husband's friend. And it was really just that consistent practice. I needed to be alone a bunch during the week, but then I would still go in these new environments. So if you are self-identifying as an introvert right now, I feel you, and there's still an opportunity here.
That's this has been such a great conversation, Melissa, and I love that we ended it on this because this conversation alone, it's it makes you so excited to just go out right now. I want to just go out and go meet someone. Like honestly, after this, I'm like, you know what? I look cute. Let's just go out and just
I'm
go
here for
to a
it.
new environment. But no, this has been such a really eye-opening conversation because, like I said before, as a woman that I think I'm high achieving,
Oh
you
yeah,
always have
absolutely.
issues going into this dating world and how to, that weird how to navigate how I show up at work and I show up in relationships, but you've shown us that there's ways that you can weave both of these worlds together and it can be very successful for you in dating. So I thank you so much for being on this episode. And I just want everyone to remember that love is not a performance review, but it's easy to rest in love once you understand all those little nitty things that you taught us and we put them into action. So If there's anything you want to say to the audience before you leave, go right ahead.
Well, thank you, first of all, for this wonderful conversation. This has been so fun. And I love hearing your perspective as well. And truly, for anyone listening, there's two things that have to occur for you to find your person. There is serendipity, but there's also strategy and action. And so you cannot have luck without action. We can sit at home all day manifesting and nothing happened, but if you have to step out of the door. You have to go into new environments and be in these new places. And at worst, you make some new friends. At best, you find your person.
Thank you so much, Melissa. That's where to end off on. And so once again, thank you. Thank the Cringe and Crumble audience. Always remember to laugh at the cringe and learn from the crumble. Thank you. Laugh at the cringe, learn from the crumble. This is Cringe and Crumble. Until next time.